Wakey, wakey, the Kellogg's football camps are here, all over the country. It's game on. Learn new skills, make new friends, and have loads of fun at your local clubs. Grab your boots for a summer of football at the Kellogg's football camps. Parents, buy a promotional pack of Cocoa Pops, Rice Krispies and cornflakes before the end of June to claim a free day. Hello and welcome to the Football for Kids podcast with me, Darren Rees. I am very excited to tell you that we have a very special interview coming up with a former Manchester City player, a man who goes by the name of Nedum Onuoha. Nedum has been there and done it, and he's got the t-shirt. And when I say he's got the t-shirt, I mean he's got the Manchester City t-shirt, he's got the QPR one, the Sunderland and the Real Salt Lake one as well. He played against the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and against Lionel Messi. And he, thanks to the people at the Kellogg's football camps, is here to answer some questions and to give some fantastic advice out. So, please do grab yourselves a notepad and pen and make sure you are listening, because this is going to be a lesson and a half. So Nedum, would you mind kicking things off by introducing yourself to the brilliant Football for Kids listeners? Can you tell us a little bit about your career and what you do now?
My name's Nedum Onuoha, former Premier League footballer. Joined Man City's academy at the age of 10. Very lucky to play for them until I was 25. I also played for Sunderland, Queen's Park Rangers, and finished my career in the MLS with Real Salt Lake. And now I've got the second best job in football because I talk about it. Get a chance to watch games and talk and say all the good things and bad things that, could be better. And overall, it's fantastic to still be a part of the football community.
Well, that all sounds amazing, and we all like to talk about football. You've really had some journey, and you were an academy player at Manchester City. How did that come about? How did you end up playing in the academy of a team like Manchester City?
So my journey is one that isn't necessarily the same these days. So I used to enjoy playing football, and I played for my Sunday league team, but I played for my age group and age group up. So I was playing 2 games a weekend. One team was notoriously bad, the other one was notoriously good. I can't remember which one was which. But overall, I loved it. I loved getting a chance to play football with my friends, and there was real joy in the weekends, whether we'd won or lost, just going to maybe like the burger van afterwards and having some food there whilst watching the older guys play. And then one year, the good team, we won a cup final. So after the game, we're all celebrating. I remember my father pulled me to the side and said, "Oh, I've got some news for you as well. You've been scouted for Man City." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, Man City, that's awesome. This is so good." This is when I was 10 years old. So I went on trial a couple of weeks after and then signed. And I was actually the first signing when the club went from a centre of excellence to an academy. And, you could say the rest is history because I was there from 10 years of age. But interestingly, it was about a couple of years later, maybe, my dad also told me that I was scouted for Manchester United. And he said to the United scout that I probably didn't want to play for them because I was a City fan. Little did my dad know I was not a City fan at that point. And, joining up with Man United in the 90s might have been a better idea. But, this is who makes you who you are today. And I had a really great career, fun career. So coming through the academy and getting a chance to play in the first team and making my debut as a teenager, 17 years of age. It came very quick, but I loved every second of it. And as I say, things have changed a little bit in that time, but getting a chance to see young people play football now and the joy that it brings them, it reminds me of my time when I was doing the same thing.
One of the things which I've spoken about on the Football for Kids podcast on numerous occasions when we've spoken about players' careers and their journeys is academies and centres of excellence. You mentioned the centre of excellence there. Is there a difference between an academy and a centre of excellence? Because I'm sure the kids who have heard it on the podcast so many times would love to know.
Yeah, they would have been. But for me as a 10-year-old, I probably couldn't be able to tell you the difference. And I think even these days, the different categories of academy as well. And I think one thing it's fair to say is Cities is one of the best in the world. I think that's why you see so many players coming through. You see the facilities, you see the nature of the players coming through as well. It is spectacular. But I think from when I was younger, the scale of it was very, very different. The complex was different. Some of the standards that you need to hit were different. And I think overall, that's been a bigger investment in terms of youth football in England anyway. But yeah, if you were able to look back at what Centre of Excellence was in the 90s compared to what academies are today, I think it looked like a different sport, to be honest.
Now, in every story that I share on the podcast, there are always setbacks, because that is just part of life, isn't it? You must have had a few. Are there any that stand out for you, any that you can remember vividly? And if there are, how did you deal with them?
Yeah, there were loads of setbacks. I think the biggest one that most people have to feel at some point is injury. I think we've got that one of disappointment of not playing, but that tends to sort of look after itself at some point. But for some, having the first injury which stops you from doing the thing that you love the most, whilst also watching other people do it, I think that is a real big test. And, at times when you can't walk anymore, you can't run, you can't be out in the field and someone says you're not going to be back 4 months. You never thought about months in that manner until all of a sudden you have to. I think that's probably the biggest setback for some. I think at my time in the academy as well, I was somebody who, I did well in school, and I did well in school because I had to put my effort into that. My situation was one whereby if I wasn't trying hard in school, I wasn't playing on the weekends. Like my parents are very, very clear about that. So you could argue having to do that homework when you're extra tired is a bit of a setback. When I'm coming back from, say, the academy training at 8, 9 o'clock at night, but I still got that homework in for the next day. A setback is sitting down there when you're tired trying to figure out where the capital of such and such a place is. But I think the biggest one for most people, you'd say, would be injuries, and that feeling of, if you ever have to think to yourself, will you be able to do something again? Whether it's, you've stubbed your toe or, you've broken your leg. These things can affect you, and it can affect how you feel when you come back as well, because very rarely are you 100% when you do touch the field again.
So what would your advice be for young, aspiring footballers who will, at some point, have some form of setback in their footballing journeys, whether that's injury or rejection from a team or whatever it is?
What I would say would be to, if you can, speak to somebody, because the likelihood is that somebody that you could speak to could give you advice which maybe you haven't thought of before. I think as young people, the phrase that I like is, you know what you know. So as a young person, you don't think you don't know enough, because you know enough to be in this situation. But so many people around you have had such more life experiences, they perceive things in a different way, they can zoom out and see a bigger picture, but you are always just in that particular moment, thinking that moment is everything, whether you want something or you don't, you think that moment is literally everything. So I think if you can, being open and being honest, because then, people can sort of like share your problems with you, maybe try and figure out a way for you to get through them. I think when people feel like they're alone, I think that's when they struggle the most. And I think as an adult now, and I was a captain for a few years as well when I was at QPR, if you invest enough time into people, you can know when things are weighing them down. And they can say that things are fine, but realistically, you see what's affecting them. And the longer that goes on, the worse the situation can become. So I think intervention through speaking with others can be a huge, huge asset, because most people have been through the things that you're going through unless you're in an incredibly unique situation.
Now, I'm sure you've been asked a lot of questions by both adults and by children. When you meet kids, what is the most commonly asked question that you get?
What did you ever play against Messi? Did you ever play against Ronaldo? And the answer is yes to both, and somehow beaten them both. But that tends to be the question, because they're the two biggest stars. But for others, it's the ones who really, really want to make it. It's almost like, well, what do I have to do? What do I need to do? And there's no one answer to that, because every person's situation is so different, from the clubs that they're playing at to, say, positions that they play, to the current state of like the way football is at this moment in time. So they always ask one question, and I tend to return it with another question. So we just have just questions that it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But yeah, I think the younger they are, the more they're fascinated with some of the biggest stars that they see on TV. So the question they tend to ask me is, have I played against this person or that person? But unfortunately, no, I haven't played against an 18-year-old, 19-year-old Jude Bellingham, however old he is, because, as a 38-year-old, I left the game a little bit before I could have.
Now, that is pretty cool that you've played against both Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. And I'm sure the many, many, many kids who are listening to this all around the world will be mightily impressed with that one. Football's obviously done some amazing things for you, and it's done so many amazing things for people all around the world. And my next question is, why do you think that football is just so very important? But in particular, why do you think it's important for young people?
Why do I think it's important? When I think the perception and the answer to that question changes the older you get, because as a young person, it was the game that I wanted to play more than any other. And it's that sort of link to sort of do something with friends. Even now as an adult, you could have a small ball, and if you have it and other adults around you start throwing it, there's a football on the floor, you can just pass it to someone. I think it's a way to sort of connect people. And, there's that sense of community as well. I think, as you can see yourself, like the passion you have in terms of like shared goals, the identity part of things, supporting a football club, getting a chance to go and play one of the best sports in the world, the joy you can have. Like my second child, my daughter, she's 7 years old, and she scored her first goal 2 weeks ago. And the joy on her face was like nothing I'd seen in her life to that point. And my son was there. He scored a few goals as well, but he saw his sister score. So they celebrate together. And I think it can really bring people together. And I think sport itself, and specifically football, it doesn't just boost your physical health, it's your mental health as well. People get a chance to do something that they love, to do it together, to share those moments. And even looking at my sort of career, getting a chance to do it at the highest level, like I didn't score a ton of goals, but of the 16, 17 goals that I scored, that feeling of having thousands of people cheering for you, having teammates jumping on you, and you having that memory, it's such a unique feeling to do at the highest level, but it's a feeling that can be done at any level. If you put down two shoes, there's a goal. If you kick something towards it and you score, that's a goal. And that feeling, that joy, I think it's just something that can bring so much happiness. And as a consequence, I think that's why it's one of the most important sports and important things in the world.
Okay, I've got a bit of a difficult one for you now. It might not be difficult. You might find this quite an easy one to answer. Now, football does things to lots of people, and one of the things that it does is it helps us learn things about ourselves, because it's a team sport, but you've also got to work really hard as an individual. So my question to you is, what do you think you learned about yourself by the time you got to the end of your playing career? And when I say that, I'm talking about the things you probably didn't realise you knew about yourself until you finished playing football.
That is a good question. I think from my standpoint, you go through different sort of like feelings as you develop. Someone could say, well, what do you think about your career overall? Well, looking back, game of football changed a lot from when I made my debut in 2004 to when I finished in 2020. The way that I perceived what a good job was in 2004 was different to 2020. And I think the responsibilities you gain along the way as you gain more experience, I think that changes as well. But as I stepped away from the game, I think I understood how it worked. And it goes beyond any particular thing on the field. It's the way that like full football clubs work. It's the fact that, if the people in charge of the kit don't arrive one day, you can't train. If, for example, somebody isn't at reception to let you in, then maybe you can't train. You start to see that it goes beyond 11 players, beyond 18 players. It's everybody involved pulling in the same direction. And that's just one of the real qualities of success. But then also, I enjoyed the fact that I was captain at QPR for 3 years from 2015, I think it was, because the team was becoming younger. They'd gone from being quite experienced to being younger, and they trusted me to be able to help those players develop. And my big one, which makes me proud, so proud, is like Ebere Eze was one of those players. He was a guy who was looking to find somewhere to make his home when I was captain of the club, and myself and a few other seniors, we helped him establish himself to where he felt more comfortable, but also understood the game of football. And I think legacy-wise, as an older player, and I think as an experienced person and somebody who has kids, if you remember the mistakes that you made as a young person and you can help younger people not make those same mistakes, then they have the potential to live a better life and to have a better career than you did. And if that's the case, then I think you've done a good job. But if you watch people make the same mistakes that you did at the same time, then what's the value of you being there? So I think as I was leaving football, I was looking at the places that I've been, and I knew the difference that I made. And I can see it in the people that are around me today. And I think I made a difference. And I think the difference comes from understanding the sport, understanding the individuals, and, not least of all, knowing that everyone is different. So never treat everybody like they're all the same. Some people want to be shouted at. Some people want to be left alone. And I think when you invest time in people, you realize what gets the best out of them. And I think that's something that I learned along the journey.
Now, a really important job on a football field is the role of being a captain, and you have been a captain for a massive team, and that holds huge responsibility, doesn't it? But what would your advice be to those people who either are aspiring to be their team's captain, or they maybe are the team's captain already? What would you say to those young people who love the game of football so much when it comes to being your team's captain?
I think the different ways to perceive it, because I'd ask someone primarily, says, why do you want to be captain? And what are you prepared to do to be captain? Because I think some of the best captains I've seen are the ones who are being asked to be captains, not the ones asking to be. Because the ones who get voted in as captains, they're the ones who the group really understand. They're the ones who the group really trust. They're the ones who can work well with coaches, work well with teammates, and care about their teammates. Because I think that's the thing that has to be key. You are the representative of all those people on the field alongside you. So I think from a captain standpoint, it's an honor to wear an armband and to be able to go to a referee, for example, and say that this is my team. They chose me to represent them. Hugely proud to do it. And there are a ton of other responsibilities that come with it. But again, are you doing it for you or are you doing it for them? Because I think if you're doing it for you, then you're kind of missing the point. Because I've had some great captains along the way, but I've also had some who were very much doing things for themselves. And they sort of upset the team a little bit too much from that standpoint. And even through all this, one thing that always sticks in my mind, and I know it's a very young audience, but Pele was never a captain because he said he never needed to be. He said he can still be a leader on the field without the armband. So I think that's something in itself that's also key. You have the people who wear the armbands who can lead, but then you need everyone else to be doing the same thing as well. So I think I'd ask, why do you want to be captain? And then if people were to vote who the captain would be, do you think they'd pick you? If the answer is no, why? If the answer is yes, why? And see what happens from there.
Now, there'll be loads of kids listening to this who want to stand out, and they want to stand out for the right reasons, and they might want to be picked for academies or centres of excellence or whatever it is. You're a man who's spent your life around football and some of the best and the greatest people in the beautiful game. And I wanted to ask you, on behalf of the listeners, what is it for you personally that makes a young footballer stand out? What do they do? Because there'll be lots of people listening who will want to do plenty of whatever it is that the likes of you are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a good question because in the last year or so, my youngest two, my daughter Taya, who's 7, and my son Ruben is 6, they've just started adoring football. They cannot play it enough. They make me up in the morning. Can we go and play football downstairs? Can you take me to training? Can I do this? Can I do that? I'll be honest, I'm tired. I'm tired, kids, but yeah, sure, I'll do that for you. And when I see the teams that they play for, the training sessions and stuff, I like the ones who are engaged and are willing to just go and get stuck in. They want to win. They want to be a part of something, and they can have good technical skills. They can have good size and so on, but do you love football? And I think the ones that look like they love it, they're the ones who'll also be very coachable. And for a time, my kids, I'd say they're 6 and 7, they're not objectively fantastic at football, but I can see them getting better because of the time and effort that they're putting in. They're listening to their coaches. They want to work on their passing, they want to work on their shooting, they want to work on their dribbles. And you can sense the younger ones who's done that for a long time. because a 7-year-old who has the ball at their feet all the time looks very different to like a 9-year-old who just picks up the game but has the physical side of things. And I think for football, the ones that love it are the ones who play it the most, who do it the longest, and have the best chance. Ability-wise, yes, it always helps to look like Phil Foden did when he was in the academy, absolutely. But there's so much more to it, and I take big pride in effort. I think that's the big thing for me. That's what I see from my kids. Like, that makes me the most proud. They're trying to do things to help their team out. They're not giving up. They're like, they might lose the ball, but they're going to try and win it back. They're trying to ask for a pass. They don't receive it. They're not sulking to the side. They're going and trying to play the game again. And those are things, as I say, that make me the most proud.
Okay, my very last question, and it's a question I'd like to ask pretty much everybody who comes on the podcast, is if you could give a young aspiring footballer one bit of advice, and I know this is really difficult, but it can only be one bit of advice, what would that bit of advice be?
I've got two things in mind. I'm trying to decide which one's the most important. As a young person, I think you'll get the best out of yourself in the game of football if you make sure that you continue to enjoy it. Because realistically, at times, football can become far too serious for some people. And I've seen some youngsters who, they only enjoy it if their team wins. And that type of thing, at some point, you'll get into your career and you'll lose more games than you'll win. And those people, you see them tend to go within the shell and just give up on the game. But I think you have to enjoy it, because then if you enjoy it, you can do it more. You can be thinking, how can we make this better? Like, look, you're playing football with people the same age as you, who are all your friends going through the same things. Listen, at some point, you might be playing in the Premier League with people who are twice your age. You're fighting relegation, being criticised from pillar to post by every member of the media, up and down the land, across the world, everything. That's when football's probably not as enjoyable, and that's more as business. But as a young person, enjoy it, because it is a game. It's a game of football. And those moments which you can share with your peers, like even for myself, some of the best memories I have, it might be playing at Wembley, doing this, doing that, but I remember so many games of playing with people who were the same age as me, who I grew up with, who I spent time with, who I went into like YTS games with in that academy at Man City. And these guys, to this day, they're still some of my best friends. And it's because I enjoyed being out there with them, and as I say, we didn't all make it to the professional level. But even today, I still see them, because those are the best years of my life.
Some of you might have noticed this, but that last question which I asked him on what would you give as your one bit of advice to any young aspiring footballer if you could only give one bit of advice? And he gave exactly the same answer as Crewe Alexandra's academy manager, Aidan Callan, who we had on the podcast just last week. And that is, enjoy your football. That really is the most important thing. Don't get stressed out by it. Don't worry if people are getting better or improving at a faster pace than you. Don't worry about any of those things. As long as you are enjoying your football and you are loving it, then you are in a good place. So once again, a huge thank you to Nedum, who was a brilliant guest. And remember, if you know somebody who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about Football for Kids. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly, or pitchside, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And remember that Kellogg's have amazing football camps taking place throughout the school summer holidays all across the country. In fact, they're in 73 different locations across the UK. The camps are for 5 to 15-year-olds and are in partnership with the EFL, Manchester City, Celtic and Rangers with FA approved coaches. To sign up today, grab a promotional pack of Kellogg's cereal, find the camp code and redeem a free place at www.kellogg'sfc.com. Terms and conditions apply.